All right. Welcome. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to United We Vote, brought to you by HeadCount in partnership with the Madison Square Boys and Girls Club, Dawell Consulting, Syracuse University, the New York Civil Liberties Union, and the New York Public Advocates Office. A little bit about the organization before I introduce you to our wonderful guest this evening. HeadCount is a nonpartisan organization that uses the power of music to register voters and promotes participation in democracy. HeadCount reaches young people and music fans where they are, at concerts and online, to inform and empower. Here at the Madison Square Boys and Girls Club, we save and enhance the lives of New York City boys and girls who, by reason of economic or social factors, are most in need of its services. Both organizations encourage young people to become civically engaged because the youth are our future and the future is voting. Be sure to log on to headcount.org to register to vote, request a ballot through email, take a pledge to get a friend to vote, or to check your status. That's headcount.org/UWVNYC. Once again, that's headcount.org/UnitedWeVoteNYC. I'm your host this evening. My name is Simba McCrae, and I'm the Director of the Future here at the Thomas S. Murphy Madison Square Boys and Girls Club, where I encourage young people to pursue post-secondary education, discover their passions, and pursue their career interests. I'd like to take a moment and introduce our Director of Operations, Mr. Tony Fort.
Thank you, Simba.
Welcome, Tony.
Thank you, Simba. Appreciate the introduction and the nice words. Again, my name is Tony Fort, the Director of Clubhouse Operations for Madison Square Boys and Girls Club. It is my honor to be in that position for Madison for over 25 years. So I have a brief message for you. And again, we really appreciate you joining us here today. And again, it's all about being united, united to vote, united we vote. And as you can see, we're about partners and partnerships, okay? And that is being united, and that's how this event, was brought together. Keep these two numbers in mind, 43 and 2, 43 and 2, and I'll get back to that in a moment. Let me tell you a little bit about Madison. Again, we have 6 clubhouses in New York City, 3 in the Bronx, the Thomas S. Murphy Clubhouse in Flatbush, Brooklyn, the L-Bomb Clubhouse in Brownsville, and also the Navy Yard Clubhouse in Fort Greene. We're also in the Bronx. We have the John E. Grimm Clubhouse in the Mid-Bronx and the Jolie Smilo Clubhouse in the South Bronx. Last but not least, our brand new clubhouse, the Pinkerton Clubhouse in Harlem. Madison's been around since 1884, and we're about saving and enhancing lives. And we're about leadership development. And I think when you think about voting, it is about leadership. And it is your opportunity to make a difference in your community. We're trying to reach everyone, but those young people, 18 to 22, it may be your first opportunity, to vote in a major election. And we also believe that, voting is your voice. Don't give up your voice. Don't give it up. This is an opportunity for you. Invite your friends also. This is an opportunity to get more folks involved. Very often in our communities, some folks just don't want to vote. All right. Get them involved. Persuade them to do it. It is very, very important. It is an opportunity for change. Stress that to them. In terms of the days, the number 43. There are 43 days left. And 2, what does that mean? It takes 2 minutes to register. 2 minutes to register. I remember in 2012, my father, who's no longer with us, was in his early 90s, and he wanted to vote. And I said, Pa, whatever it takes, all right, I will take you there. Yo te voy a llevar. I took him, and he voted. That was the first year that Barack Obama was on the ballot, and I'll never forget that. It was a challenge, but we made it happen. Voting, again, is important. It impacts housing, okay? It impacts healthcare, employment, Very important. So again, I challenge you all to vote. If you haven't registered, to register to vote. We have 43 days left, 43 days. So let's make it happen. And again, continue your involvement with the Madison Square Boys and Girls Club. And again, you are in the right place at the right time. We have a compact hour of fun and information. Okay, you have to be informed. Be informed. Okay, thank you. And again, thank you to the team. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Simba.
Thank you so much, Tony. Also here at the Madison Square Boys and Girls Club, we have our premier Youth of the Year program where young people compete on a local, state, regional, and national level for scholarships. Speaking of Youth of the Year, tonight we have with us our 2020 Youth of the Year finalist, Mr. Kamoy Hutchinson.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Simba. Hello, everyone. My name is Kamoy Hutchinson. I am the Madison Square Boys and Girls Club 2020 Youth of the Year. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm 17 years old, and I'm a freshman at Stony Brook University. And I'm here to talk about voting. I'm excited for the rest of the evening.
Nice. And you will be turning 18 before November 3rd, correct?
Yes, by November 3rd, I will be 18 years old, so I will have the opportunity to vote.
Nice. Glad to have you here, Kamoy. Be sure to tune in. Stay tuned because Kamoy will be doing a special performance for us on the virtual stage. So we look forward to seeing you.
Thank
you. Next up, we have Shawnee Parker, who was a summer youth employer since 2019 and 2020. Also a assistant aquatics instructor at the Thomas S. Murphy Clubhouse. Also an avid learner, always raising awareness on issues in the world. Welcome, Shawnee. Welcome.
Thank you, Simba. Hi, my name is Shawnee Parker. I am a freshman at Berry College and I'm 18 years old. I have voted before. I'm a New York native, so I voted in the primary. So to vote for the first time in the presidential election means everything to me. And I can't wait to tell you why for this evening.
Nice. Welcome. Next up, we have Felicia Lee, Syracuse alumni 2020, Associate Program Manager at TransPerfect. Welcome.
Hi, Simba. Thank you. It's good to be here. As you mentioned, I am a representative of Syracuse University. I just recently graduated with my MBA from the Whitman School of Management. Excited to be here, excited to talk to this wonderful group about voting and opportunities and change. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Felicia. Next up, we have Yusuf Abdul Qadir, an adjunct professor at Syracuse University.
Hi, my name is Yusuf Abdul Qadir. Can folks hear me? I'm sorry. Of course, when you call me, my internet would decide to freeze. My name is Yusuf Abdul Qadir. I'm the director for the New York Civil Liberties Union Central New York chapter in Syracuse, New York. I'm a Bronxite originally, and I am also an adjunct faculty in the School of Information Studies at Syracuse University, an alum. And I'm so excited to talk to you all about why voting matters, why this issue is so important, and especially this election in particular.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. Glad you can join us. Next up, we have Jamaila Rose from the New York Public Advocate's Office. Welcome, Jamaila.
Hey, thank you so much, Simba, for inviting us to participate. I'm really excited. I'm the Deputy Public Advocate, and I oversee all things around civics and voting rights. And so there's so much that our young people need to know. I'm happy to be able to break it down and hopefully get some people registered tonight. So let's go.
Let's do it. Thank you so much, Jamaila. Next up, we have Salam Gashaw, Community and Diversity Manager at HeadCount, leading the United We Vote New York City Coalition. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Salam. I use she, her pronouns, and like he said, I'm the Community and Diversity Manager at HeadCount. Really excited to get us registered, really excited to talk about voting. It's going to be a great day.
Speaking of registration, Salam, how do we get registered? How do we go about getting registered?
Lovely. Okay, so I'm going to highlight a few things right now. First, October 9th. That is the deadline in New York City, in New York State, to get registered to vote. If you aren't registered by October 9th, you won't be eligible to vote in the election. So it's really important. I know a lot of us don't think about voting until mid-October. It's important that we think about it now. We think about our plans and we check. So in order to register to vote, there's a link going on across the bottom of the screen. It says headcount.org/UWV NYC. So you guys can see that right here. If you go to that link, when I ask you the question, are you registered to vote? You have a few options. Yes, I'm already registered. Cool. Go to that link and verify your voter registration just to make sure that it's accurate, that your address is right, all of that. Option number 2, you could say, I'm not eligible to vote. I'm not a citizen. I'm not 18. I have a felony conviction, anything of that sort. There's an option on there for you too. So you go to that and then you'll head to the pledge to vote option. Then you can get people in your life who are old enough to vote or who are eligible to vote. Promise and pledge to talk to them. We'll hit you up about later in the, right before November, about some tools to talk to people about voting, things of that sort. And then the key option here, if you say, no, I'm not registered to vote and I would like to get registered, you can click on that register to vote link. We're going to do it right now. So I want you guys to go on there, register to vote. You're going to put in your email address, you're going to put in your name, and then it's going to prompt you to go and put in your personal information. You'll throw that in there. If you have your ID, you can finish the process online. If not, you can just finish the registration and you will get a form to mail in. Right up here, you'll see a you'll see a QR code. You can use that QR code as well to register if you don't want to use it. You'll put your smartphone camera for that. Now, it takes 2 minutes. If you finish right now, like let's say you're real quick, you know your address, you know all that. If you can, text that code, text that link to your friends, to 3 people that you know. Because one thing that we've seen is when people are accountable to register to vote with other people, they're 22% more likely to turn out to the polls, and that's huge. We want to get people out. We want to get people ready. And then the other thing I want to highlight, this year, people just need that ask put in front of them. A lot of people haven't been asked, are you registered to vote, especially young people. We don't get campaigns asking us as much. We don't get people asking us as much. So it's important that we're the ones asking the people in our circles, are you registered to vote? So right now, while we're here, while we're sitting here on this call, take those 2 minutes, finish it while we're talking about it. Don't worry, there's not too much happening on the screen right now while I'm talking. My head is just moving. Go to the other page, finish that registration. If you have any issues, any questions, feel free to head to headcount.org or reply, send an email to info@headcount.org for some assistance on specific questions you might have when it comes to registering.
Thank you so much, Salam. Yes, make sure we register to vote. November 3rd is right around the corner. Once again, that's headcount.org/UWVNYC. Headcount.org/UnitedWeVoteNYC. Let's get to it, folks. Now, this is the portion of the show where we get to ask our wonderful guests some important questions about voting. First up is Mr. Kamoy Hutchinson. Hey, Kamoy, once again.
Sir. Hey.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm excited to be here. So, why are you excited to vote?
I'm excited to vote. I've been excited to vote for quite a while now. Through most of my schooling, or anybody's schooling really, there are a lot of things that you sometimes have to vote on. And to me, a vote is an extension of your voice. You don't always get to voice your opinion or your ideas on certain things. And through voting, you can have your voice heard, even though you're not saying anything, especially in current situations like the social injustice in each and every one of our communities, the pandemic that we're all experiencing. There are a lot of things that need decisions, that need solutions, that need things to be sorted out. And through a vote, we can have that happen.
What policy or issue is important to you, and why do you think voting helps to affect that?
Well, like I just said, social injustice, racial injustice, all that happens in our own community. There's sometimes that we have to put people up, and sometimes that we have to bring people down, and all of that is done through a vote. Through the vote, you can see what the people really want or don't want, and a vote will allow for a change to be brought through that. There's also the issue of poverty in a lot of low-income communities, homelessness, different things like that, that with a vote, change can be brought about through that.
Absolutely. What message would you have or give to your generation of voters?
To my generation, which can be very stubborn. I just think my generation needs to understand that we are the next generation, that we're up and coming, and our vote matters just as much as those coming after us and those that were here before us. We all want things. We all want to see things in our own communities, in our lives, while we're here. And through a vote, that can happen. Our rights and the laws that we want to see from the government, a vote will help that happen. Yeah, my generation just needs to understand that voting is important. Voting is necessary because you don't always get to say what you want to say. And voting is an extension of your voice, so use it to its best ability.
Thank you so much, Kamoy. Our next set of questions are for Yusuf and Jamaila.
Hey.
How are you? Starting with Yusuf. How old were you when you voted for the first time?
Yeah, thank you again, Simba, for that question. I was 18 when I voted for the first time, and very much like Kamoy, I was a freshman at Syracuse University, really involved. I turned 17, and then I turned 18 actually 16 years ago yesterday. And so I think it's, as a person who was young, and I think I'm still pretty young, don't let the gray hairs fool you. I think it's really important to be involved and engaged and as early on as possible. And so I have so many things to say about why this election is important and why elections are important generally, but I want to respect the time and allow the other panelists also add what she has to say when she started voting.
Nice. Jamaila,
yes.
How old were you when you first voted?
I believe I voted for the first time at about 18 years old. Graduated from high school and went to the polls. For me, it was an interesting experience, but I was always very politically engaged. I remember, and I'm going to date myself right now, but I remember being young and watching the race between George Bush, the dad, and Michael Dukakis, right? And I was a kid, and my family was very politically active, and they would talk to me about politics. And so I couldn't wait for the opportunity to vote. I kind of felt like it was a moment I was waiting for, and I was going to take that opportunity, as well as going into college, just to voice my opinions on who I thought should sit in the presidential seat and who I thought should be our local representatives. But I've always really been into civics. I know that's not everybody's experience, but it was mine.
Awesome, awesome. Back to Yusuf. Why did you vote for the first time?
Yeah, Jamaila, you dated yourself, so I think we're a few years apart in age. I'm Muslim American, so I'm African American, but my religion is Islam, and George Bush was president at the time. And I remember when he got elected in 2000 in a very controversial election. And I remember being in high school and watching the election results and basically crying, oh my God, it's going to be over, because at the time he was governor of Texas, and there was a lynching of a black man who was trailed in a truck. And as the governor, he had an ability to kind of engage in that process, and he didn't. And so I was if that's how he's going to be governor of Texas, imagine how he's going to be governor of the United States, a president of the United States. And shortly after, in 2001, we had 9/11, and being a New Yorker under 9/11 was tragic, and it's still tragic. 19 years later, thinking about the amount of deaths that we've experienced as New Yorkers and the resiliency that we've had. But being Muslim in post 9/11 at a college campus, and you're actively Muslim and you're actively Black and you're in racial justice work and you're in, Middle East policy work and you're a student organizer, I felt that election was really important, and we were in the midst of going into a war that we are still in today. So there's a lot of reasons that I voted, partly because of, my politics and like poverty being such an important issue for me, partly because of the way the country was going and the now trillions of dollars that we were spending in wars that were unnecessary, partly because I felt that was one of the ways that I could have an easy role to play in making my society better. And I also felt a responsibility to be a part of that process. There's so many reasons, and they're all unique to what matters to you and what's important to you. But I just would urge people that in this moment that we find ourselves in this particular time in history, if you care about LGBTQ rights, if you care about police accountability, if you care about disability justice, if you care about civil rights, if you care about clean air or clean water or climate change, if you care about voting rights, all of that and more is on the ballot in this election. And I just can't underscore how significantly essential, as a person who is an organizer, who is on the ground in the streets, who is bringing it to elected officials on police accountability, who is active in the Black liberation movement world and space, I am saying that this election is probably one of the most essential elections for the state of our democracy. So if nothing else, our democracy is on the ballot.
Well put, and very good reasons. Back to you, Jamaila. Why did you vote for the first time?
Why did I vote back the first time? And to kind of get both perspectives of really what was happening in the political realm. And my family, I'm a first generation American. My family is actually from the Caribbean. They're Afro-Caribbean. And it's a big thing. Like even in Jamaica, you have the different parties and elections are contentious. And so it's a big thing to vote. It's a big thing to get engaged. My father had a unique experience, and it's funny because Yusuf talks about like wars and stuff. And I remember growing up, we were doing like the bomb scares, and they would have us hiding in the hallways, and that was like normal to be in elementary school and to be in junior high school, and for them to be doing bomb drills. There was Cold Wars, all kinds of things happening. So you kind of grow up in Brooklyn, New York, as I did, in East Flatbush, just having an awareness of what was going on around you. And aside from that, like my father had always shared his experiences, even though he wasn't African American in that, he wasn't the descendants of enslaved people here in this land. He is a descendant of Maroons in Jamaica, who were enslaved people who then fought their way out of captivity. And he came here as a young immigrant and fought his way into the Union, and was able to secure himself employment. And he always shared these stories, and my mom shared these stories. So when I got engaged and began to vote and begin to do things and organize in my community, even as a young person, it was just like, this is what we do. This is what Black people do. This is what young Black people do. If we want change, this is how we're gonna get it. Some people feel more empowered than others. But, I think this particular election is so important too. Yusuf raised a couple of good points, but one of the things that I'm really excited about is also seeing more like Black women in leadership, seeing a lot more women being appointed to positions of leadership. And when I think about even now and with this election and why it's so important, we're voting for president, but we're also voting for Congress. And in New York State, when you look at the congressional leadership, even there's only one Black woman. And there's only one Black woman there because we put one Black woman there, so it's so important for us to feel that we have ownership over the seats in our own district. If women make up half of the population, we should be making up half of the leadership as well. So it's so important that we vote in not just for presidential elections, when we see individuals who represent us, but also that we vote in local elections, Congress, state, city council, Senate, everything that becomes available. That is how we get representation. And those are the people who then are coming from us to represent us to then, be able to fight some of the bad policies that we're seeing on an everyday basis that affect police accountability, environmental justice, sanitation, whatever you name it, college debt. These are all things that can be solved if we have the right people in office. So that's why we have to vote. That's why I vote, and that's why I encourage other people to vote as well.
Thank you so much, Jamaila, Yusuf, and Kamoy. Very good points. Very, very good points. Now we would like to get into our first artist this evening. This is a good friend of mine. He's performed at the world famous Apollo Theater, produced for big names such as Coldplay and Beyonce. He's worked with producers Swiss Beats and recently had a song titled We'll Make It Through on News 12 because of its subject matter that's relevant to the times now. I'd like to introduce none other than Mr. R&B, Mr. Venor.
Good night, good night.
Welcome, welcome.
My brother, how you doing?
I'm okay, and yourself?
I'm great.
How excited are you to be here this evening?
Man, it's a blessing to be alive, so,
Yes, yes. On the topic of voting, why is voting important to you, Venor?
So, for me, a sentiment that I've been seeing going around is, people kind of feel like voting doesn't matter. Why vote if it's not going to matter anyway? Things are rigged and all that. For me, whether you believe it in it or not, I believe that just the understanding of who's running for office and what their policies are kind of gives you more of an insight as to what's going on in your community. So even if you don't necessarily believe in the process, I think just making yourself knowledgeable or making yourself aware of who's in certain positions could be beneficial to your life.
Very well put, very well put. Thank you so much, Venor.
Not a problem.
Now it's time for him to hit the virtual stage.
Yeah.
We have a special treat for you all this evening. My God.
So I'll let everybody know, this is a voting event. This song has nothing to do with politics at all, but, hopefully it'll be a blessing to y'all in here. I've been looking for a sign now, looking for a sign that it's all wrong. Try to tell myself you fooled me all along. Been in denial, running away from growing up. I've been looking for a reason to give up on you. Try to tell myself you know more than good love. Hey, yeah. Yet at the table, you're the only one showing up. You make me better than I am. Beautiful black woman, your style, your nature. Beautiful black woman, however you come, I'll take her. I love you. I love you. I love you. Beautiful black woman, your grace, your body. Beautiful black woman, just had to sing about it. I love you. I love you. I love you. I got familiar with a woman, dinner with her, she said I could do no wrong. Won't admit that I've been foolish all along. But see the hours far, far away from pull it up. Maybe you could be the reason. Maybe you could be the reason I give in. Show me how to give you more than I've given. Hey, yeah. So if you meet me half the way I'm showing up, you make me better, yeah, better than I am. Oh, beautiful black woman, your style, your nature, beautiful black woman, however you come, I'll take you out of you. I love you, I love you. Beautiful black woman, your grace, your body, black woman, just had to sing about it. I love you, I love you, I do. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Vanor, for that wonderful song.
Appreciate
I
you.
would think of women's rights, man. You know, everything has something to do with it. The subject matter is great, you know.
Right.
So, right on, my God. Thank you so much for joining us
Appreciate
today.
you. Appreciate you.
Now, we would like to head to Salam to tell us how to register to vote and the regulations required.
Lovely. So I'm just going to go into some specifics on voting in New York. And the first thing I want to highlight is making your plan. So we have a few different options on how to vote, right? So there's always election day, which is November 3rd. But I know this year, a lot of people are voting by mail for the first time because of COVID. It might be an option that is just now being available to you. So I want to go over the 3 different ways that we can vote. One is voting early. One is voting by mail, and one is voting on election day. And so one thing that I just want to go before we go into these 3, regardless of how you are choosing to vote, it's important that you get started on voting and making your voting plan today. Like literally today, let's get started. Let's pick our plan, pick our path, and make sure that we're in it. Especially if you're voting by mail, we want to get that process started as soon as possible, as in before October. Get the process started and make sure that you are ready to vote by mail for the election, if that is something you're choosing to do. Now, one thing I do want to highlight, if you feel safe enough and you feel confident enough to go out and go to the grocery store with your mask on in a socially distanced way, we are recommending that you might want to try early voting. It's a really good way to kind of make sure that your vote can still count. Early voting is not usually as crowded as a lot of other different methods of voting, as in voting on election day. If you do want to vote early, your days are October 24th to November 1st. And so that's something to keep in mind as you're getting closer to that day. It's important that you check who's going to be on your ballot, get that information, check where your early voting polling place is. This might be and likely will be different than your polling place on election day. They always look a little different. The other thing is it's important that you come, just advising you, just bring your ID. Even if you are a registered voter, sometimes there might be a mix-up, there might be an issue, bring your ID. The last 2 things I want to highlight, this goes for either early voting or voting on election day. In the event that there's an issue and, like you're not on the rolls or something of that sort, ask for a provisional ballot. That way, if you are registered to vote and you should have been able to vote, your vote will still be counted. In the event that there was an error with your registration, you actually weren't registered to vote, then your vote won't count. So again, to emphasize, make sure you're getting that process started early, check your ballot. The last thing is ask for a poll judge. If you're experiencing a lot of issues at the polls on election day and you want to figure out how you can make this process work, ask for a poll judge. Now, that's your kind of pathway if your voting plan is going to be on election day or it's going to be early voting. Now, if you're voting by mail, that's something we want to get started as soon as possible. If you're voting by mail, your ballot will be due on October 3rd, postmark. So in different states, sometimes you have to have your ballot in by that day. In New York, you just have to have it postmarked by the 3rd. And so to request that ballot, you'll need to get the ballot request in by October 27th. Now, that's when it says you need to get the request in. We're advising you to get that in as soon as possible, as in this week or next week. So if you haven't started the process or you're interested in kind of requesting a ballot, you can go to that link, headcount.org/UWVNYC. And at the very bottom, there'll be an option to request your ballot. If voting by mail is the path that you want to take, we recommend you get started today. Request your ballot, get your information, make sure that it's ready. And then for any other information that you might need, you can go to HeadCount. You can get your polling place there. You can get who's on your ballot there. You can go to headcount.org/state to find more information on early voting, on pre-registration if you're 16 or 17 years old. And another thing, if you are 17, I know a lot of us will be like, oh, I'll register on my 18th birthday. If your birthday falls after the deadline, it is better that you pre-register. So in New York, you can pre-register from when you're 16. Get that process started right now. And so that's really the basics. Thing we really want to highlight is making your plan to vote. So decide now if you want to vote on election day, if you want to vote early, or if you want to vote by mail. Especially if you're voting by mail, we want to get that process started as soon as possible. So those are your three options. Those are kind of how you go through them. You can find more information for voting and making your plan at HeadCount's website and kind of get that information, as well as some more specific information on what it looks like to vote in New York, and specifically what it looks like for you to vote in New York. So just go to headcount.org and you can look up your polling place. You can find out what's going to be on your ballot. You can look at all of those issues.
Thank you so much, Salam. That's headcount.org/state, and register to vote at headcount.org/UWVNYC. Now it's time for our second portion of the show, where we get to ask some questions about the importance of voting. These questions are for Deshani. Welcome back, Deshani.
Hi, Simba.
Why are you excited to vote?
I'm excited to vote because it's my first presidential election, and because one of the ways to invoke change in the United States is through voting. So to help me invoke change means everything to me. Also, I want to lead by example for people who look like me and may not want to vote in this election for numerous reasons. Though this may seem like a tough one, the important thing above all to me is finding a candidate that aligns with your beliefs and is committed to enact those beliefs on your behalf. Because at the end of the day, every voice counts. And for those who cannot vote yet, it's very important that you find someone who is able to vote in your life and tell them why it's important to you so that they can vote for you.
That's right. What policy or issue is important to you, and how do you see voting affect this?
I think an issue that is important to me is discrimination and social injustice in our country. Especially now, there are people who want to restrict your rights of minorities and keep the already oppressed for even longer time. Voting does affect this because there are candidates out there who you may believe will do you more harm than good, and they do not need your vote at all. A candidate who does want to help your people who look like you does need your vote if you choose to give it.
Right on. What message would you give the people in your generation about voting?
A message I would give would be, I know this election may be hard. It may be a hard one to even start with for your first presidential election. But I do believe that now is the time to research and think as hard as you can about what you want for this country. And if worse comes to worse with any candidate in this election, please remember that the government works for us. We don't work for them. And if you have any grievances to air, please air them in any way that you can. We have social media at our fingertips now. It's really amazing. And one of the many gifts of our founding fathers have given us is freedom of speech and the right to protest and use our voice to check our government and remind them that tyranny, hate, and fascism does not belong in our country as we live in a democracy. So the past has passed, and with unity, it's definitely possible for us to change our country for the future, and hopefully that's for the better.
Yes, our voice is very important. Make sure you vote at headcount.org/UWVNYC. Our next set of questions are for Felicia, and starting with Felicia. How old were you when you voted for the first time?
I remember it like it was yesterday. I was 19.
Nice. Why did you vote for the first time?
I think there's probably a laundry list of things, that I could name. And, at the time, I think for me, it was my first time. I think I was more excited to vote than I was to to get my license to learn how to drive. So I knew how impactful that moment was for me, for, you know, my kids in the future. So I think that really resonated with me. And there were a couple of issues, you know, that I really wanted addressed at the time. And I stood and wanted unity and peace. And that was a focus of mine. And that was something that, you know, I thought about, you know, voting and thereafter. So yeah, I would say that those were probably the main focuses for me.
Nice. Now, this question is for Salam. How old were you when you voted for the first time?
So mine's a little different. I tried to vote when I was 18. I live in New York, but I'm a registered voter in Colorado. So I tried to vote by mail. Gag is I didn't know that they could, like, if there were signature rules, I didn't know any of that. So my vote didn't count that year. So my first time where my vote counted was 19. All to say, just make sure your vote counts. Check your rules on headcount.org. But for me, 19 was the first time that my vote actually went through and counted. And I actually voted.
And why would you say you voted for the first time?
Honestly, probably mostly just because I could, right? Like when you're at that age, it's like, if I can do it, I will. Like I'm about to do everything I can do. But part of it is also like I was interested in the world. I knew how much America affected everything in this world. So I felt a vested interest to vote, to get out there, to like make my voice heard. And so I wanted to see what I wanted actually like in the world. And civic engagement was huge to me then. Like at that, I remember when I was 19, 18, like the elected officials, voting, all of that was the key way that I was getting involved. So I definitely leaned into it and voted too.
Great. Felicia, was there a certain policy or issue that caused you to vote?
There were a few, and I think one thing that really stood out to me, and I studied science in undergrad, so climate change was something that was top of mind for me. And, you know, you can't stress the importance of it. You know, if we're not here on this earth living healthy, you know, not just for our generation, but for future generations, you know, what's the point of any of it? So that was something that I, you know, thought about through and through. What were the policies that were going to be implemented? Where were we going to focus our efforts? Were we going to have allies, you know, internationally who were going to support those efforts as well? So that was something that was really, again, top of mind for me and something that I really thought about when voting.
Salam, what policy or issue inspired you to vote?
For me, it was 2015. So it was police brutality, kind of really just looking around this country and seeing what was happening, being out in the streets and being like, you know what? Like, apparently you can vote for these police chiefs. Apparently you can vote for these DAs. And that to me was huge. And I was like, yeah, even if I don't vote for anything else, like I want my voice to be heard on this.
Very important question, Felicia. Why do you think it's important for people, especially young adults, to vote?
I think Kamoy said it so perfectly. Not only is it our obligation, but it's our opportunity to be heard. It's our opportunity to make a change on so many different levels. And just like he said, we are the future. And I think what we decide today has such a ripple effect and such a huge impact on future generations. And it's important that we understand how you know, monumental these moments are and how much we can have a change and an impact in such a positive way. So we definitely need to get out there, have our voices be heard, and do as much as we can immediately. We can't wait.
Definitely. Salam, why do you think it's important for people, especially young adults, to vote?
I think it's a few reasons. First, like our generation, Gen Z specifically, people like to say that we're unengaged or that we're, you know, like we're not into it. We don't like voting, all of that stuff. So one, to prove people wrong, like we're engaged. I see my generation out in the streets. I see us leading movements. And so I know we're engaged. And so we can use our voice at the ballot box to kind of be a megaphone, to amplify what we're already doing, what we're already saying, how we're already pushing our communities. So I think that's important. And the other part is, you know, we're young, especially young people. There's a lot of things that we see in this world where we're like, this is an issue, and I don't like how this looks. And we've seen our generation do that time and time again, especially young people. When it comes to climate change, who sounded the alarm so loud that people couldn't ignore? It was young people. Who led these movements? It was young people. So there's a lot of young people who are seeing these issues and who might not know how to get involved, right? Like, so I say just because you can, right? Like that's one of the main reasons that I think it's important for young people to vote, because that's an easy way for us to get involved in these issues that when we're looking around, we're like, this is not how I want the world to look. When I imagine the world, like this isn't what I want to see. And when you see that and when you want to do something about it, like voting is a very simple way, low lift way for you to engage and like really get your voice out there and like be heard.
Thank you so much, Deshani, Felicia, and Salam. Thank you so much. I remember my first time voting at my district in my elementary school. Oh man, it was such a great feeling. I saw the whole community involved. My mom said, boy, you better go out there and vote. And that's what I did. So I want to continue to do that and continue to, you know, build. So next up, we have our second artist this evening, Mark Ramos, AKA Morning Wars.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
How are you? No
Good,
problem. Thank you for joining us. Morning Wars. Why is voting important to you?
I think voting is important to me at its most basic core is that, you know, having the right people in office, setting the right policies in place, you know, for everybody, for the greater good. It really minimizes the amount of hoops that everyday people have to go through to get like the help that they need and the help that everybody deserves in this country and every country, no matter where you have the right to exercise your right to vote. And, you know, we're all floating on the same rock and we're all under the same sun and we got to help each other out. And I think a good place to start is definitely by voting.
Nice, nice. Mark Ramos, I heard you are a Syracuse alumni.
I am. Go Orange.
Nice, go Orange. A musician, filmmaker, Syracuse alumni from the visual and performing arts from New York. Let's give it up for Mark Ramos, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm going to be doing a cover of a song by the band Oasis. This song is called Don't Look Back in Anger. And to me, the song kind of represents, you know, unity and coming together and in a time of uncertainty. And it's kind of a song about defiance in the best way possible. It's kind of standing up and fighting for what you believe in. So I'll let it off at that. This is called Don't Look Back in Anger. Slip inside the eye of your mind. Don't you know you might find a better place to play? You said that you never been all the things that you see slowly fade away. So I'll start a revolution from my bed. Just the brains you said I had went to my head. Step outside, the summertime's in. Stand up beside the fireplace. Take that look from off your face. You ain't never gonna burn my heart out. No. So sad can wait. She knows it's too late as we're walking on by. Her soul slides away. Don't look back in anger, I heard you say. Take me to the place where you go, where nobody knows if it's night or day. Please don't put your life in the hands of a rock and roll band and throw it all away. So I start a revolution from my bed. Cause the brains said I had went to my head. Step outside the summertime's in. Stand up beside the fireplace. Take that look from off your face. You ain't ever gonna burn my heart out. So sad you can wait. She knows it's too late as we're walking on by. Her soul slides away. But don't look back in anger, I heard you say. So sad you can wait. She knows it's too late as we're walking on by. Her soul slides away. But don't look back in anger. Don't look back in anger, I heard you say. At least not today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Mark Ramos. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I love the name Morning Wars. Sometimes it's a war to get up in the morning for me.
Oh, it truly is. I know it.
Fighting with the covers. All right. Glad to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, guys.
All right. Now it's time to bring back Salam so she can tell us how to register to vote.
All right, so I'm gonna give us a few more seconds. I hope all y'all are listening to this music and really enjoying this amazing music that y'all are registering, right? Like, split your screen, scroll over, register to vote. While we're talking, just listen and register to vote. A few things I just want to highlight while we are sitting here. I'm giving y'all some time to register. I really want to highlight the aspect of this that is communal, right? Like talking to people. So some statistics I just want to share, some things that we found in our research. This year, we've seen a lot of people haven't been able to haven't registered to vote in the beginning of the pandemic. Why? Because most people, especially young people, and especially people of color, register to vote in person. We register at DMVs, we register at our community centers, we register at the Boys and Girls Club. And so now that those things aren't as readily available as they would have been in a regular election year, a lot of people aren't registering to vote. And why is that? Because the ask isn't put in front of them. So while you are sitting here listening to me one more time tell you to register to vote, if you already did it, if you did it the first time we were talking about it, I really want to encourage you to just make sure that you're asking people in your life if they're registered, if they've verified their registration, if they have a plan to vote. Those are things that can make all the difference, because someone might really just not have thought about voting yet and just might not be registered. So come election day, when they're ready to vote, it might turn out that they're not on the rolls, and that would be tragic, because we want to make sure that everyone who wants to vote is eligible, registered, and ready to vote. So while you're sitting here, while you're listening to all this, and you might be sharing it on Facebook, I want y'all to tag someone in the comments. I want y'all to send a text to someone, ask them if they're registered to vote, because you really could be the difference between them having been registered and them not being registered. So just go ahead and do that. And then if you still are in the process of registering, or you're just joining us now, head to headcount.org/UWVNYC, and you'll have the option to register to vote, verify your voter registration, or pledge to get 3 friends to vote if you yourself are not eligible. That's going to be how we're going to do it.
Thank you so much, Salam. Once again, that's headcount.org/state or headcount.org/UWVNYC. That's headcount.org/United We Vote NYC. This portion of the show, we're going to allow our guests to ask some questions. So we're going to bring back all of our guests now. Alicia, ask away.
Awesome. This question's, I think, for you, Yusuf. be a great person to answer this, but does voting make a difference? And, if so, how?
Yeah, thank you, Felicia. It really does. I know that, Jamaila talked about the need to kind of think larger than just the presidential election, and we really do. So this year, for instance, there are your state senators, your state assembly people, congressional offices are also up every 2 years, so they're on the ballot in addition to the presidential, election. In 2016, Donald Trump won by like really, really low margins, and by really low, I mean like less than several thousand in some key states. Like in one state, he won by, in Wisconsin, he won by 26,000. There were like 93,000 Black voters that didn't vote, for instance. So like, of course, in that race, like every vote matters. And every vote matters in significant ways, because when each person engages in the process, it helps to make sure that the process is fair. It helps to make sure that your voice is counted. But it's also important to lay out, like, because I don't want to leave out there that like Black voters didn't vote, as if like Black people just don't care about the democracy as much as everyone else. It's really important to talk about that there are particular efforts to make sure that it's more difficult for people to vote. And I think that's a significant part of the conversation that often doesn't get played. And that's a part of the conversation that really gets lost. We this summer lost a giant, John Lewis, and this weekend we lost Ruth Bader Ginsburg, two real significant figures in American history and American political and civil rights life. And John Lewis wrote a letter before he died. I just want to read this because he's speaking about and to young people. He talks about, though that he was surrounded by loving parents and a large family, they couldn't protect him from the oppression that was waiting the second he walked out of the door, right? He continues by saying, like so many young people today, he was searching for a way out or a way in. When he heard Martin Luther King and was inspired by him. And what really got John Lewis involved in politics, as he talks about ordinary people with extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of America by getting in what he calls good trouble, necessary trouble. Voting and participating in the democratic process are key. The vote is the most powerful non-violent change agent you have in a democratic society. You must use it, he instructs us, because it is not guaranteed. You can lose it. And I think that is the most important reason why this matters. If we look at what's happening with the USPS, the Postal Service, and attempts and lawsuits around delaying absentee ballots, if you look at that, the fact that we're in a global pandemic where it's going to be naturally more difficult for people to vote because they don't want to risk themselves or their families. If you think about everything that matters to you, whether you're in the streets right now fighting for police accountability, whether you're around climate justice or environmental justice or disability rights, like these core issues about whether or not we are counted as human beings, in fact, our very rights to vote are on the ballot. And I think these are the reasons why. And I know that people say that young people are the future, but I actually want to say like you're the present, because you matter now. You're not just leaders for tomorrow. You're leaders today. You're doing the work today, and your voice matters today. The question is there going to be a tomorrow that you can recognize that you want to live in? And that's what we're fighting for now. And that's why it is so important for your voices to be heard and for you to be in the process. So yes, you best believe that every vote matters, and voting is so essential to our democracy.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. The next question will be asked by Kamoy.
Hello, Salam. When I go to vote, what should I expect? What am I supposed to bring with me?
Sorry, I was muted. Also, Kamoy, you snapped. Your voice is amazing, so I just wanted to give you your flowers right there. If you're voting for the first time and you're choosing to vote in person, one thing I'll advise you to bring is your ID. So bring an ID with you, and if you want to be extra safe, it's not required, bring a proof of address. These are all just precautions. You can check specifically what ID you need, all of that at HeadCount's website. But I just want to highlight that's something to bring. Now, what to expect, I'm going to go over the 2 different ways. You can vote from home or you can vote in person. And each of those have 2 different things that you can expect. If you're voting from home, one thing to expect is the first step is going to be you're going to request your ballot. So you're going to request your absentee ballot, right? So that's a whole process. You actually have to request that they send you the ballot. Once you request your ballot, you should be getting your ballot at some point in October, you should get your ballot. At that point, when you get your ballot, you can fill it out, just a few little notes. Don't write anything extra on your ballot. So, don't be like, I like this candidate, I hate this candidate. That can get your ballot disqualified, actually. So it's important that you just fill in exactly how it shows, fill the dots in all the way, the bubbles in all the way, and then sign. There will be a place for you to sign. Make sure that you follow the directions. Sign where you're supposed to sign. Sometimes it's on the envelope, sometimes it's on the inside. I vote in Colorado, so I don't know the specifics where you sign in New York, but follow all the directions. There also will be a Make Your Vote Count page at HeadCount that is going to launch later this week. On that page, you'll be able to check and make sure that you're doing everything you need to do to make your vote count when you're voting from home or voting in person. Now, if you're voting in person, the process will look a little different, of course, because you're in person. So what do you need to bring? What do you need to do? First, mask up. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. Put your mask on. And then we're going to head out, get ready to vote. So you're going to look up your polling place. So you can do that on HeadCount site, find out where your polling place is. I advise you to also check this on day of. In the event that a polling place is closed or something has come up or something is moved, check this day of. You could check it before the election, but check day of, where's your polling place? Take your mask, take your ID, head out to that polling place. And when you go in, there should be poll workers there. Hopefully, you might even be able to volunteer to be one, plug for later. But go to the poll worker and they should be able to help you through the process. The one thing that's important to know when you're voting in person is that the poll workers are really there to help. Like, they are paid for that day and they're volunteers who are there to help you vote. So if you don't know what you're doing when you walk in, if you get lost, make sure you look out for a poll worker who can help walk you through the process. Now, what it's going to look like is you're going to be getting a ballot and you are going to be voting. In New York, I believe there's machines. Again, I'm a Colorado voter, so I don't know exactly what the in-person looks like here. But if you do want to know for yourself, you can always look up New York and then election machines or polling places, and then you should be able to get a breakthrough. We find them online for all the states, and so this is just what we advise. You can find that online and kind of look through what the machine will look like. So tidbits, just quick things to take if you're in person: take your mask, take your ID, maybe take a snack just to be safe if you're there for a little longer than a minute or two, and then just get ready to vote. So again, check who's on your ballot, check your polling place, and make sure that you're ready. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Salam. Our next question will be asked by Deshani. Deshani.
Hi, Jamaila. Okay. Well, in case you can hear me, I'm gonna ask. I'm a student, so what type of ID do I need to vote, and how do I get it?
I think you're asking that question, right? I'm sorry, my internet cut out really quickly, so I didn't hear the first part. But if you are a student, first of all, congrats if you registered to vote and you're voting for the first time. Any student can bring their state ID with them to the polls if they're voting. And if you don't have state ID, I know it was mentioned earlier, you could also bring your student ID, utility bills, and other things that can pretty much show proof of address. That is what you would need to vote. Normally, after you voted for the first time, you will not be asked for ID when you're voting. Because it's actually against the law to ask someone for a voter ID. But if you're in New York City, you also will receive, once you register, a little voter card. And you can also bring that voter card. And when you get to the polls, if you're choosing to vote early, starting October 24th, or if you're coming on election day itself, you get to the polling station and it allows you to scan that voter card. They have all your information in there, so it's already in the poll books. And then you go straight to the station and you can vote. You can cast your ballot. It's that simple.
Thank you so much, Jamaila. Our next question will be asked by Felicia.
Salam, question for you. if we have questions about registering or where to go to vote, who do we ask?
Yeah, so first thing, headcount.org. You can find all the different things. So headcount.org/state will have information on voter ID. We'll have some information on pre-registration. You can go to headcount.org/vote from home, which will have information on how to vote from home, how to make your vote count. Or you can even just go to headcount.org and kind of peruse the website. You can find your polling place there. You can find who's on your ballot. You can find what you need to bring. All of that information will be on HeadCount. Now, if you go through all that and you're like, see, but I have a really specific situation that is not listed on this website that I need help with, you can email info@headcount.org or go through our contact us. So we have a contact us form. We have real people. I literally respond to these. We're sitting there responding, making sure that you get the information you need. So go through the website, look to see if maybe your question's answered there. And if it's not, and if you're like, I know that this is not something that will be answered on the website or something I can find, you can just ask us. So just ask right there. And so the last thing, while we're looking at the website, just in the event that you happen upon this website, we also have an FAQ page that has a lot of different questions, in-depth questions about all the different questions that you might have when it comes to voting. It's a really good place to kind of start and peruse. Headcount.org is where you can find all this stuff. The state websites are amazing, and that's where you'll find we pull our information from. We just try to make it in as simple, like in one place. Sometimes it's hard to navigate state websites. We just want to put it in one place for you so it's as easy as possible to get ready to vote. And so that's how you can do that.
Thank you so much, Salam. For the next question, Dasani, ask away.
Hi, Yusuf.
Hey.
So what types of offices are on the ballot and why do they matter to me?
Thank you. And I actually want to uplift something you said earlier about like they work for us, because this summer I had a video that went really viral, and it was about an intervention that we had with our local mayor and police chief and school board members and city council members in Syracuse. And we were talking about police issues, and we were like, we have to make sure that they realize that like they're public servants, which means they work and serve the public. And I think sometimes it's really easy to focus on the big ticket presidential and, congressional or Senate races, but we don't really think about the local races. We don't think about the state races. And so in 2020, I live in upstate New York, so it's a little different than New York City. New York City, I know there are not local elections right now, but there are state Senate and state assembly district races that are going on. The state legislature is effectively your state government, right? So things that are about state law that affect us, like for instance, last year, we fought really hard for bail reform. That was rolled back in some senses. There were some changes to the bail laws. There was a repeal of 50A at the state legislature this year. 50A is a police secrecy law that basically allowed police records to be hidden. That was repealed this year because of the state legislature. So the state legislature has significant power over policing, over schools, over so many things that matter to us that are closer to us. And then obviously there's the federal election, which is the presidential, and the congressional election. So each of those have different roles and capacities and have different effects on our lives, but they're all very important. And so if people are really, really interested in how do you make sure your voices are heard, definitely show up to vote. But don't just vote, right? Like it's so important to vote, but also after the election, show up and make sure that okay, we voted you in. Now, did you do the things that we asked you to do, and where are my receipts? Because I want to make sure that you're doing what we asked you to do. So it's a continuous effort, and it's about continuing to make sure that your voices are heard after they're elected too.
Very well put. Thank you so much, Yusuf. Kamoy will be asking our next question.
Hello. This is to Salam. The candidates that I'd be voting for, how do I find information on them?
Yes, lovely. So you're going to go to headcount.org/your-ballot. If you can't get that, or if some reason you it's worth typing in, it's not working, you can go to the menu and you can click My Ballot. What it's going to ask is for your address. So it's going to want you to put in your specific address that you are registered to vote at. So now if you haven't registered, you don't know which address that is. So make sure that you register to vote first. But you're going to put in your address, and it's going to give you a sample of everyone that's on your ballot. There's a bunch of other resources you can go to find out what their stances are. We at HeadCount are nonpartisan, so we're not going to tell you who to vote for. We're not going to be like, yes, this one, no, this one. We're just going to give you all the information and allow you to do the research and really make the choice of what lines up with what you want to see, what you're imagining for the world. So you can find some of that information on our page. If you want to go a little more in depth, you can always Google their name, go to their website, see their platform. Now, if you don't want to do all that, there's a bunch of other different ways you can do it. You can go to Ballotpedia, you can go to Ballot Ready. Both of those are organizations that have really good breakdowns on what is on your ballot. Now, a lot of that you'll find on our website too, but there's a lot of different ways for you to find this information. Now, you type your in, get that list of everyone who's going to be on your ballot, and that's a really good place to start.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Salome. Next, we have Felicia asking.
Hi, Jamaila. So question for you. This is a very, very important question. So yeah, I think you'd be great to answer this, but who can vote by mail? Is it safe? And will my vote be counted if I do vote by mail?
That's an excellent question, especially considering what just happened in our primary, where for the first time during COVID-19, we had to vote during a pandemic. And we increased the number. Normally, I think less than 4% of people in the state of New York vote absentee, which is by mail, whether you call it voting by mail or voting absentee, it's the same thing. And this time, I think we probably had 1 million ballots or over 1 million ballots mailed out. So there were some issues in June, but as we were talking about why we vote for representatives and why it's so important. So we have some representatives, some pretty dope ones in the state legislature who just passed some recent laws that helped us fix a lot of the problems that we encountered in June with the ballots, some ballots showing up after the deadline and other issues and votes being thrown out. But voting by mail is absolutely safe. It's absolutely secure. Don't believe any of the hype that you hear on the news about, people being able to scam the systems. Everyone, if you are a registered voter, you can vote by mail. If you are someone who is immunocompromised and maybe you don't feel comfortable coming to early voting, which starts on the 24th, you can then request your absentee ballot. All the instructions have been given to you throughout this whole night. You can request your absentee ballot. You can complete it when it comes to your home, sign it, date it, and drop it in the mail. If you cannot drop it in the mail or you do not want to drop it in the mail, postage is already paid on it. You could also take it to your local polling station and drop it off there. It is absolutely safe and secure.
Thank you so much, Jamaila. Shawnee, ask away.
Hey, Yusuf. We kind of already answered this already, and I'm pretty sure I already know the answer, but do we need to vote every year?
Yeah, I think vote early, vote often. And by that, I mean, it's an early vote period in New York State. I think it begins October 24th and lasts until November 1st. So vote right early, as early as you can if you're able to. And Jamaila talked about absentee voting as another alternative for folks. But, this election is important, and there will be an election afterwards that's going to be for local offices that are going to be important. And so it's going to be really essential for us to try to make sure that our voices are heard at the local levels, at the state level, at the federal level, for every position. Outside of New York City, we also vote for judges. So we vote for Supreme Court judges and city court judges. And so for folks who may be in the kind of Rockland, Westchester, outside of New York City area, those are also important elections that matter too. So there's so many levels of government, and each of them have a role in your life, and you want to make sure that the right folks are representing you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. Thank you. Now, this question is for both Jamaila and Yusuf. Why do you think it's important for people, especially young adults, to vote? Whoever wants to go first.
I'll let
Jamaila.
you go first.
Rock,
Okay,
paper,
I'll go
scissors.
first. I'll go first. I mean, it's so important because, you know, young people, especially now, I think for the first time in a very long time, the population of young people, you know, ages 18 through 24, they're actually one of the largest voting blocks in the country. And like when you think about it, when you look at some of the things that affect young people, whether it's college debt or, you know, education, you know, policing, you know, and these types of things, they don't often have a voice because they're not necessarily engaged in the process. And unfortunately, the way that our political system works, not necessarily democracy, but the way, like, you know, the politics of it all, you know, elected officials who are running for office are more prone to talk to people who they think are voting all the time, right? And it's because young people just don't necessarily vote in the same frequency. They don't vote as often, even though they should. Not all young people, but many of them don't vote as often. No one talks to them, right? And so part of the process of engaging, you know, in civics and getting your concerns heard, aside from protesting in the streets, you have to make your voice heard at the ballot box. So yes, you know, you march down the streets, you put your fist in the air, you fight for your rights, you do all of that, but then you have to take it to the polls, you know, because when you become a voter, people are mandated to listen to you. And when you think about it, there's so many things that recently happened in our state, and we spoke about some of the policies earlier. Like there was this one that I like to mention, especially when I'm talking to young people, especially young individuals who may be from immigrant families. Like for such a long time, even if you were undocumented, not that you can vote if you're undocumented, but you couldn't even get a driver's license, you know, and the fact that we were able to, in New York State, to flip the state legislature and get different elected officials in power, those elected officials were then able to create new laws that allowed undocumented young people to get driver's license, you know, of course, once they're of age and et cetera. And that directly impacts, you know, our economic stability, that directly impacts immigrant families, you know, and it's just so important that we put the right people in office. And in order to do that, we need all of us. It's not just for people who are 65 and up. It's not just for people who are 25 and up, but for all of us, 18 through 24 till end of life. We need to be voters. We need to be represented at the polls. Black people, immigrant people, all people of color, anyone who is eligible, especially naturalized citizens. You need to get to the polls so that your voices and your issues can be represented in some of the highest offices in this country. That's why I tell people to vote. It's so important.
Yeah, I mean, Jamaila, you really hit it on the head. I can't stress enough just how, and people probably hear like, oh, this is the most important election of our lifetime. But this one really is for a lot of specific reasons. I mean, I think I want to just use another like few words from John Lewis, because I think to me, it's inspiring. And I think it kind of captures the words better than I could put it. And then I'll just give a few more data points that I think are important. Lewis, before he died, wrote an essay that he published in the New York Times. And really the last paragraph of it is when historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. I think that's like, to me, and again, I'm a millennial, and then there's Gen Z afterwards. I think we really are the most important voting bloc, because it's us who are coming of age, who have come of age at a moment where there's so much at stake, right? The climate is at stake. When people talk about climate change, like the planet is not going anywhere. It's going to be our ability to live on the planet that's at risk, right? It's so important that people understand that, like, right now, as I said earlier, 80,000 people, that margin is how many votes President Trump won by. And that was across 3 states. 80,000 people across 3 states. 10,704 in one state, 46,765 in another state, and 22,177 people in the third state. If those 3 states, and in one of them, in Wisconsin, there were 93,000 Black people who were not able to vote. If those 93,000 people voted, Wisconsin would have gone towards the other candidate. And I'm a nonpartisan. This is a nonpartisan discussion. I'm not saying vote Democrat, vote Republican, vote Working Families Party. That's not really what it's about. What I'm trying to say is just how much this matters, because now today, there's a conversation after Ruth Bader Ginsburg died last weekend about who we're going to appoint to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is going to determine everything about our lives, from whether or not you have a union ability, whether or not there'll be clean water, whether or not climate change rules can come into effect under the Clean Air Act, whether or not gender discrimination will be protected under the law, whether or not a woman has a right to choose, whether, like, I can go on and on and on, trans rights, civil rights, qualified immunity for police officers. All of these big issues that we're facing today are going to be determined and discussed in the court. Healthcare is literally going to the court in a month. In the time that we have a global pandemic, there's a question as to whether or not Obamacare can be the law of the land. And so for young people, it's so important for us to show up and to show out. And we've got to make sure that we don't just show up, but we show up in such large numbers that we demonstrate that our voices matter, that never again for another election will people say, well, young people don't really vote and young people don't really care. No, we care, right? If you're part of the hundreds of thousands of Americans who have $1.6 trillion in student loan debt, I'm one of those people. This discussion is going to affect you. It's going to affect your kids, and it's going to determine whether or not Social Security will be there to support your parents, Medicare will be there to affect them, and Medicaid will be there to make sure that you have the health insurance that you need. So you best believe this is probably the most important election, and young people matter because it's going to be us who are going to be the ones that are going to live in those conditions.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. Very informing. I definitely know about student loan debt.
I went to Syracuse, so I very much know about student loan debt.
Yes. Thank you so much. Very informative. There are 2 other ways you can help your community besides voting. Jamaila, can you tell us more about those?
Absolutely. I'm really excited. So just 2 things, and I won't take too long because I know we're running over time a little bit. It's so important also for young people to get involved in becoming poll workers. Polls as in voting and polling stations. So typically what we've seen, if any of you have ever gone to vote with your mom or your dad or your grandparents or whomever, you'll notice that poll workers are typically more aged than you are. You know, they're not in college, etc. They're much older. Voting has changed, you know, in the state of New York. And a lot of the devices that we use now, we're using scanners. We're not pulling. Back in the day, we were pulling levers and stuff. There's just new technology out there. And we need to make sure that young people are becoming engaged and that you are applying to also be a poll worker. And it's not free work. You don't have to volunteer. It is paid work. You do get paid $200 a day to be a poll worker. You got to wake up pretty early in the morning, but you know, it's worth it for our democracy. If you plan to work for early voting as well, you can make $200 a day for several days. You know, people, it's not that you're coming out of it with a lot of money, but you are coming out with some cash, with some income, you know, from doing this work. The other thing that I wanted to remind people of is when you're becoming a poll worker, it's important to have representation. So it's important that we have poll workers who can speak other languages, you know, that we have interpreters. It's important that when people go to the polls, you see even like the LGBTQ population, gender non-conforming poll workers. It's really important that all of us are represented in the people who are running behind the scenes, running our elections. Lastly, the next big thing that's coming up, this is a very, very big year, 2020. Right now we're in the middle, not in the middle, we're actually at the end of the census. So the census happens every 10 years. You can find the census. I think they put the link on the screen. You can find the census at my2020.gov. We're talking a lot about elections. We're talking a lot about representation, which just means, the people who you elect to be in office to determine how money comes to your community, to determine, how your schools are funded, et cetera. The census is directly related to our right to vote, especially to vote for people who are in Congress. So every 10 years, we count the number of people living in this country, not the number of citizens, not the number of visitors, the number of people living in this country, whether you're undocumented, naturalized, a green card holder, a permanent resident, or a citizen. And we then say, because of this number of people, we need this many congressional representatives in Congress. So it's directly related. We also then take that number and we say, because 10 people live in this city, we need to provide funding for the schools for these 10 people. We need to provide affordable housing for these 10 people. We need to provide whatever it is, fill in the blank, for these 10 people. If only 5 people complete the census, now that federal money that's coming down for the people that are there is now money for 5 people that's now spread across all the 10 people who live there. So it's so critically important that 1, you complete the census at my2020census.gov, 1, for representation in Congress, 2, also to make sure that you get all of the money and resources that you need for your community. Like I said, from hospitals, we look at COVID and how we were overrun when COVID-19 came and there weren't enough hospital beds. There's no wonder there were no hospital beds. Growing up in Brooklyn, New York, I lived in a Black community, mostly low-income community, also undercounted. I lived in East New York at the time. All of our hospitals closed. The nearest hospital was miles and miles away. The reason these hospitals closed is because they didn't have the federal resources and the federal funding that they needed. So now here we are in the middle of a pandemic, COVID-19 hits, and what's happening? We don't have enough beds to serve people, and people are dying unnecessarily. So the census can help us fund all of these things that we have in our communities. It's important that you fill it out. If you ask your parents, if they haven't filled it out yet, or if you have not filled it out yet, definitely ask your parents if you could just do it for them. It takes literally 10 minutes. It's 10 questions, and it affects the next 10 years of all of our lives. So we're counting on you, you're counting on me, and together, we're going to get the representation that we need right here in New York State. We lost 2 congressional members before. We don't need to lose any more.
Thank you so much, Jamaila. Before our final song, sung by none other than Kamoy Hutchinson himself, we want to say a quick thank you to the Madison Square Boys and Girls Club for letting us host this in the Murphy Clubhouse. Also thank the people who produced this event, Sarah and Jay Daniels from Dawell Consulting and Tanya Cherry from the Madison Square Boys and Girls Club, as well as Kaylee Brock, the New York City Syracuse University Alumni Clubs. We especially want to thank our guests for taking the time to share with us and help us understand why we need to vote. Remember, the youth are the future, and the future is voting. Thank you again, everyone, for your time, and have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Let's go, Kamoy.
I just want to live. God protect me. I'm a young Black man doing all that I can to stand. Oh, but when I look around and see what's being done to my kind every day, I'm being hunted as prey. My people don't want no trouble. We've had enough struggle. Oh, I just wanna live. God protect me. Ooh, I just wanna live. Oh, God protect me. So many thoughts in my head. Will I live or will I end up dead? Dead. It's an unequal sequel. No matter where I be, there's no place safe for me. asking, yeah, for too much. So Lord, please help. I just wanna live. God, protect me. Oh, I just wanna live. God, protect me. This is my battle cry. Ooh. Oh. Oh, I just wanna live. God, protect me. I just wanna live. God, protect me. I just wanna live. Thank you.
Great job, Kamoy. That was amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you to our audience for attending. Make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure your friends and family register to vote at headcount.org/UWVNYC. That's headcount.org/United We Vote NYC. See you on election day, and good night.
Good night, everybody.